All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you. Welcome to our mini grant webinar today.
Vamos a comenzar. Bienvenidos a todos a nuestra sesión web de mini grant.
Before we start, we're going to turn on the simultaneous Spanish interpretation. Once we turn this on, you'll be able to select your language. And if you'd like to choose Spanish, you can click on the globe on the bottom of your screen and choose Spanish as your language.
Vamos a comenzar y antes de comenzar tienen la opción a escuchar esta sesión web con interpretación simultánea en español. Si ven en la parte inferior, la parte baja de la pantalla, ustedes van a ver cómo se muestra en la imagen el pequeño globo. Hacen clic ahí y van a ver la opción de elegir el idioma que ustedes quieren. Si quieren escuchar la interpretación simultánea, simplemente elijan español, Spanish, y van a poder escuchar la interpretación simultánea. All right, thank you. Ready to be assigned.
All right. We also have American Sign Language interpretation today, and we'll have the interpreter pinned to the screen in a second. You can also turn on the live transcript if you like. That should be at the bottom of your screen with the little icon that has the closed captioning and live transcript. A couple other logistics for today. If you are not speaking, please mute your mic or your phone. If you're using your phone, you can mute and unmute using *6. We definitely want to take your questions today. You can please type them into the chat box anytime during the presentation. We'll answer them at the end of the session, as well as you can use the raise hand feature when we get to the Q&A session if you'd like to share your question at that time. And we are recording today's session. So if you would like to remain off camera and off sound, please do so by turning off your camera and using the chat box to ask any questions. So today we're going to have some welcome and introductions. We're going to have an introduction to SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments, and the Go Human program. We're going to provide an overview of the mini grants program. We have a past awardee who's here to speak about their project. And then we're going to do a walkthrough of the application, and then we'll have plenty of time at the end for any questions that you may have. To start, we want to definitely hear who is all your county you're located in to the chat box. That'll help us know who's on today. And to introduce myself, I'm Michelle Lieberman. I work for the Safe Routes Partnership. We are a national nonprofit organization that works on active transportation and equity. We are partnering with Tool Design Group to support this grant program from the Southern California Association of Governments, SCAG, and the Go Human team. So we have members from all organizations here today to help answer questions. So feel free to put your questions in the chat box. I'm going to now hand it off to Andres to introduce SCAG and Go Human.
Hi, everybody. My name is Andres. I am with the team at SCAG Go Human. And SCAG is the Southern California Association of Governments. We are the metropolitan planning organization for Southern California, comprising the counties of Ventura, Los Angeles, San Bernardino, Orange, Riverside, and Imperial. And this geography includes 191 cities and 18.9 million people. Next slide, please. Go Human is SCAG's active transportation safety and encouragement campaign. We offer a regional advertising campaign to increase traffic safety in Southern California, and we co-brand our advertisement campaign with a variety of local partners. We implement temporary safety demonstrations and programming, and we hold a variety of safety workshops, webinars, and technical assistance. Next slide. The mini grants program is one of our programs to help facilitate local traffic safety projects. The mini grants program offers small grants up to $15,000 to community-based organizations and nonprofits to build street-level community resiliency and increase safety of people most harmed by traffic injuries and fatalities. And this includes, without limitation, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, people with disabilities, frontline workers, particularly those walking and biking. And this, through this grant, we hope to invest in organizations focused on or led by members of disadvantaged or underserved communities. While this is a traffic safety project or traffic safety grant program, we encourage organizations who are still invested in safety to apply, including organizations focused on public health, disability justice, social service, organizations of parents, organizations focused on elders or comprised of elders, and rural communities. And we also prioritize leadership and capacity building strategies. Next slide. And here I will pass back to Michelle. Thank you.
So in terms of eligibility for this program, community-based organizations, nonprofits, and social enterprises are all eligible to apply. If you are joining from a government agency, such as a city or county or a school district, those government agencies are not directly eligible, but we encourage you to partner with one of these other organization types in order to apply and support the program. As Andres mentioned, SCAG covers the Imperial, Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Ventura counties, and applicants from those counties are eligible. And the other thing to note is that SCAG will be prioritizing equity and considering equity in the funding decisions. So funding will be distributed to prioritize equity, particularly within communities that have been historically disinvested or in disadvantaged communities. So in terms of the grant amount, SCAG is awarding up to $15,000 per project this year, and awards are made on a reimbursement basis. This is up $5,000 more than in previous years. And if you're curious, in 2021, SCAG awarded 31 mini grants at up to $10,000 each. So there is a significant increase in the funding available per project this year. In terms of the timeline, applications are due by the end of the day on April 29th. SCAG will be scoring applications and doing a notice of conditional award to awardees on May 16th. And then we'll have a few weeks where we'll be able to refine the project scope and make any adjustments that are needed. Anticipating that projects will be implemented between the middle of June and finish implementation by the end of August. We have a couple of reporting requirements during mid-project update in the form of an email or phone call. And then also our team is always available for one-on-one interactions if you have any other questions as your project moves along. And then
Yeah, Michelle, very briefly, you had momentarily cut out there. So I just want to reiterate a couple of the reporting requirements. So similar to our last round, we require organizations who are awarded a mini grant to participate in a mid-project update, which can be an email or a phone call. And then that final report will be due on September 9th. So just to So you all are clear on the reporting requirements. And Michelle, back to you.
Thank you so much. So what is SCAG looking for as they score applications? The selection criteria is shown here, and there's four sort of categories that they're looking at. So the criteria will include impact, reach or engagement, feasibility, and cost effectiveness. The Go Human staff will also consider geographic representation in the selection process. So at this point, I want to turn it over to Daniel from the Artlands. The Artlands received a mini grant in 2021, and Daniel will present on their project.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. As Michelle said, I am the director of the Artlands. We are a nonprofit that does public art projects and owns a gallery and publishes books, among other things. This particular project was an inclusive crosswalk mural. It was the rainbow colors and colors of like every race, just trying to include everyone. It was conceived of actually by our city council member, Denise Davis, who was instrumental in getting this like approved by the city. And she came to us back in February. We were trying to do it in time for Pride Month, but you know, with the city, it took a lot longer than Pride Month to get everything approved. But we went ahead and our organization commissioned 3 artists to come up with a design, Jillian Sander, Bridget Bilbo, and Sophia Diaz. The mural went through the Redlands Cultural Arts Commission process and got approved by that commission and went on to the city council. In the meantime, we applied for and received the Go Human Community Streets mini grant. And in July, the city had put, there was no policy in Redlands about street paint or asphalt art at all. So in order to even have our project approved, we had to kind of put a policy in place allowing for any kind of art to be done in the street. So it went before the council, and the council initially rejected the putting in a policy because they said it violated FHA guidelines. And then the subsequent meeting, they had a vote on our specific project. And after they initially rejected it, we organized and came with a lot of people and had testimonials on the value that this project would bring to the city and increasing safety, increasing, visibility for the LGBTQIA community. And ultimately, on a split vote, they approved the mural to go forward as a one-off. And we ended up painting it on September 10th, like pretty much the last day it took to get everything approved. So yeah, it's been a success story. It's still there. The paint we used in it is supposed to be good for 5 years. So it's a lasting project in the community. And we've had nothing but positive feedback ever since. So, and hopefully it'll pave the way for more street projects and traffic safety projects in Redlands going forward. And yeah, that kind of got ahead of myself there, but that's the photo of the 3 artists painting it on paint day. And actually just to reiterate, this project would have never been possible without the grant. That was a big selling point with the city. Like if we hadn't had it funded, they would have not approved this to go forward. So thank you all again for making it happen. That's the finished product.
Thanks, Daniel. This is a really great project. Glad to see it happen.
Yeah, thank you.
So to give you some ideas of other past mini grant awardees, here are some images on the screen. The first on the left, University Park Slow Jams. They did a really creative engagement project where they had Band-Aids that community members put on things like cracks in the sidewalk to indicate areas of concern. Bike Ventura here in the middle put educational materials in storefront windows. And then here on the right, Santa Ana Active Streets used their mini grant to support their Luces Vivas project to distribute bike lights and do safety education pop-up booths. Some other awardees used the funds intersection mural in front of a school. Community intelligence here in the middle mapped crash data and identified the presence or absence of pedestrian safety measures in South Central Los Angeles. And then here on the right, Los Angeles Walks held a texting and online engagement campaign around traffic safety. So there's other descriptions of other projects on the website. as well as photos from the 2020, 2021, and 2018 mini grantees. Some other ideas to think about is GoHuman has additional resources that can be used with the mini grant projects or without the mini grant projects. First is co-branded materials, and these are digital or print materials provided at no cost. These can include lawn signs, banners, social media graphics, and a lot more. Like I said, this can complement your mini grant project. You can also have it as a standalone project by requesting the materials online. The other GoHuman resource is the kit of parts. And this is SCAG's lending library of pop-up materials that communities can use to temporarily demonstrate street design treatments and safety infrastructure. The kit of parts includes a parklet, a curb extension, a median refuge island, artistic crosswalk, and a separated bike lane. And again, this can be used in conjunction with your mini grant project or separately. You can see the picture here on the right of the crosswalk on the bottom, and then the co-branded materials are on the top there. So if you are wanting to use that with your mini grant, please just include that in your application. Next, we're going to do a run through of what the application looks like. There's essentially 4 elements to the application: applicant info, project info, the project budget, and the project timeline. The application is intended to be simple and relatively short. To access the application, it is online on the website. And there's a link towards the middle here, as well as a PDF version if you'd like to preview the questions, or if you run into any difficulties with the online JotForm platform. Also on this webpage are the program guidelines and an FAQ sheet. So starting with the applicant info, this is pretty basic information: your organization name, contact information. That way you can be paid. Insurance is also required, but SCAG will consider on a case-by-case basis organizations without insurance. And we can also talk about ways to partner or address insurance concerns too.
Yeah, and Michelle, I noticed there was a little cutout there right before you said, so we can make sure you can be paid. So I want to just reiterate that the element that we're looking for is a W-9. So just that paperwork to make sure you get paid. So that was that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Next, we're asking for a brief description of your organization. This could be something like an existing mission statement. The second part is the project information, and this is where you'll tell us the project name, description. We ask if you are planning on a virtual event that you let us know it's a virtual event, and if you're planning any in-person activities, that you let us know if you have in-person activities included in your project. And the next set of questions get into that selection criteria. So first we have questions about reach, and essentially who are you planning on serving with your project? Who's the population, the audience, how many people do you anticipate reaching, and the steps you're going to take to reach this audience that you intend. Second is a section about impact. And here we really want to know what are the primary safety concerns of the audience that this project is reaching, and how will your project address these safety concerns, and what are the outcomes you're looking for. Next, we have questions about feasibility. First, what are your qualifications to carry out this event or project? And how do you plan to implement the project within the budget and also the timeline? The last portion here is around cost effectiveness, and this is where you'll be providing your project budget. This is a little bit different from previous years if you've applied for a mini grant in the past. Here you'll be using the project budget template that's provided by SCAG. It's linked here on the website, and we'll show you what the project budget looks like. It is a spreadsheet that's set up to help you plan not only the costs for your event, but the amount of time that you need to complete a project. There is a tab essentially, you'll have labor costs and direct costs. So for the labor cost, you'll list the job titles for any staff that you have that will work on your mini grant project. Please note that you should be listing job titles and not names. You'll also list the hourly rate for each staff. And we ask that you be providing supporting documentation to justify that hourly rate. Then you'll add in the number of labor hours and the spreadsheet will automatically calculate your cost. There's also a section for direct costs, and these are hard costs such as printing, permit costs, if you're purchasing things like bike helmets or renting equipment. It could also include services such as photography and videography if you're paying somebody external to your organization for those things. Here you'll enter the amounts for the direct costs. Again, we'll have to have documentation that supports these costs. And then after you add all of your hourly rates, your labor hours, your direct costs, the budget spreadsheet will calculate the grand total, and this will be your proposed budget for the project. So the final component of the application is your project timeline. Here you'll have your key actions that you'll list, as well as a timeline for implementing those key actions. And here we just ask that you also make sure to plan for any, if you have local or city or county permits or review for your project, that you account for those in your project timeline. And when you get to the end of the application, there'll be an attachment section. This is where you'll attach your budget spreadsheet, any supporting documentation, and any other additional materials as needed. So when you go to submit your application, if you're using JotForm, you'll submit it through the online system. If you run into any challenges with JotForm, you can fill out the PDF and then submit it by emailing that application to both Andres as well as this Community Streets email address. And both of these are provided on the PDF, so you don't have to write it down right now. So last, I wanted to cover some eligible and ineligible expenses, mainly because we got a lot of questions about these. So eligible expenses, expenses should be directly related to your proposed project. And these can include labor costs, such as coordination, design, facilitation, training, et cetera. Costs for printing. Are also eligible if they are purchased to support bicycle education. Any supply or equipment rental fees, and any virtual platform subscription fees, like if you're doing an online webinar type thing, are also eligible expenses. So
I will also say, Michelle, I'm just something that was momentarily cut off. That permits and fees related to your project are eligible expenses. So, you know, please include them in the budget if they are applicable to your work. Thanks, Michelle.
thank you. And maybe the more important or more of interest is the things that are not eligible. And we can answer any questions about these. So first, any giveaways that are not tied to a safety education component. So just general giveaways are not eligible. Stickers, raffle prizes, food or beverages, plants, purchasing office furniture, paint or chalk, event, entertainment or music, any advertising that's not directly related to the project, implementation of a study plan or program, habitat conservation plans, lobbying efforts, and any items that are not included in your original project budget are not eligible costs. Also refer you back to the website for more information. So again, there's the program guidelines. This is where you'll apply for the actual mini grant, and all of the frequently asked questions are listed here as well. So with that, we will go to questions, and I will scroll back up in the chat and see what questions we have. So first question was about 501c4s. Are they eligible?
Yes, that's a type of nonprofit organization and it is eligible.
Great. Next question was about insurance waivers and requirements. Andres, you want to cover that?
Sure. This is always a big question. We have different types of insurances that are required for a mini grant project. That includes general liability, automotive insurance, workers' compensation, and professional liability. Professional liability is not, let me just say, there are instances where we can waive some of our insurance requirements. Oftentimes we waive the professional liability. If you are not using a car to do your project, we can waive the automotive insurance. Workers' compensation, if your organization doesn't employ anybody, if you're an organization of volunteers, you don't have workers' comp, you don't need to provide workers' comp. The general liability is a harder one to waive. That anytime your work takes place out in the public or even in a private business, if you are doing an in-person kind of work, then we are very likely going to continue to require a general liability insurance, and our guidelines identify how much is needed. If your work is all virtual, if you're going to do a virtual campaign, or if you're going to hold virtual workshops, we evaluate all projects for insurance requirements at a case-by-case basis, and for many instances, virtual projects, we can waive that general liability. So we have a set of requirements. Oftentimes we can waive some requirements, but oftentimes we will continue to require that general liability. So you can say like, okay, I need general liability. But if there's a question about how to get that, you can get it yourself. So you can find a different funding source and purchase insurance, or if you don't have it already, you can use the insurance of a partner organization. So if you are aware of another organization that you work closely with and you want to go together on this mini grant application so you can use that other organization's insurance, that is an option. If you're working with your local jurisdiction, sometimes you can request to receive some of the coverage that local jurisdiction has. So if you're partnering with your city, the city can provide insurance on behalf of your project. So those are some options available to you in order to have the insurances that we require.
Great, thanks. Next question was on community-based organizations. How are those defined? Must it be a 501c3?
Community-based organizations, you do not need to be a 501c3.
Next question was regarding the selection criteria. Are those percentages of the various criteria the percent weight they will have when the applications are scored? And yes, I believe that's how it works.
Yes, and each question on the application identifies how many points those questions are worth.
Next, we have a question about the type of supporting documentation for labor costs and direct costs.
Great. And then, so I am going to tag in my colleague, Kana. Kana, are you available to describe a little bit more detail on this supporting documentation for budgets?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kanasato Wen with the SCAG. So for supporting documentation for the labor costs, we are looking for something like a copy of payroll register. If your organization doesn't have payroll register, maybe like a copy of pay stub or some sort of documentation to verify the rate, hourly rate that you are proposing in the budget, just so that we can determine the fair and reasonableness of the cost. And for other direct costs, it could be just a simple, the market research rate. So like if it's printing costs, some sort of quote for printing job, or if you're just purchasing papers, just a screenshot of Amazon for the paper price would be sufficient.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kana.
Mhm.
Next question is the question that we get often: is paint covered for a mural project?
No, paint is not allowed by the mini grant, but we encourage those artistic projects and hope that the mini grant funds can be used for a lot of the planning, logistics, any permits that are required. So we can cover all of the work that goes into the preparations of implementing a mural project, but we cannot cover that paint cost.
Thanks. I did see a question about replaying the presentation later. Yes, the presentation will be available online tomorrow. Let's see. Another question on how the organization gets reimbursed. Andres, can you talk a little bit about the reimbursement process at the end?
Absolutely. So the mini grant is a grant done on a reimbursement basis. So you apply, you receive, and should your project be accepted, you will receive an award letter that details the amount of your award. At the end of the implementation period, you will submit your final report and documentation. And once that final report and documentation is approved, your work will be reimbursed based on the amount that you were awarded. And so that reimbursement can take up to 30, I think 3 to 4 to 5 weeks. It's listed in the program guidelines. So you will receive the funds for your mini grant project after your work is completed.
Thank you. I see one last question here, and if anybody else has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Is it one application per organization, or can a couple of different departments within an organization apply?
I'll answer that very quickly. First, I wanted to provide an additional clarity on the previous question. Once you submit your final documentation, you also submit an invoice for that dollar amount of your award, and that invoice is, it's a simple template that you would follow. Now the question about one application per CBO. Community-based organization, any applicant is free to submit however many applications that they want. The projects must be distinct. You can't submit 2 applications for what is ultimately one project. They have to be separate and distinct. But one thing to understand that our evaluation criteria evaluates the feasibility of a project. So we just need to make sure that your organization demonstrates sufficient capacity to execute both of these projects. And another consideration is that we also we want to ensure that we provide funding across the region. So we're going to, we want to be sure we're funding projects in as many places as possible. So, you may be able to, submit 2 very strong projects, but those are some additional considerations that will be a factor in the evaluation of those projects.
Great. Any other? Oh, one more question. Can previous awardees apply for this? Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I will leave you with Andrea's contact information. If you have additional questions, feel free to reach out. I don't know if you want to type your email address into the chat really fast. If you're
Yeah,
able to.
I will. And I also want to say that we're here to help you craft strong applications. So any questions, we are so appreciative that you all are sharing your time here to learn more about this program, and any questions that might come up as you're developing projects. If there's something that you are just unsure about, don't hesitate. Please reach out, email, or just give me a call. And we'd be happy to discuss more about, how we can, address some of your questions. So I'll type my email address in the chat. And so I welcome your messages.
Thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope that you will consider applying.